In this video, you get a proven New Zealand travel itinerary for 3 weeks that covers the best sites and hidden gems, perfect for first-time visitors. But selecting all those items for the North and South Island is actually not the most important part of a successful travel plan. Because for the best holiday, you first need to get your timing and locations right. So let's dive into it. So here's a map of the North and South Island of New Zealand. Before we go through the locations, I have 3 key recommendations for you. Number 1, with 21 days available, I recommend to spend 1/3 of your time in the North Island, so 6 days, and 2/3 of your time in the South Island, so about 14 days. Number 2, as much as possible, try to stay 2 nights at each location. That way you have a full day to explore. Number 3, I recommend to connect to North and South Island with a domestic flight. That will really free up your time to explore places. You can download this free travel planning sheet in the description box below. Also find links to all the services there as well. So before we go into the daily details, here's an overview. Auckland, 1 night. Coromandels, 2 nights. Rotorua or Taupo, 3 nights. Then take a domestic flight to Christchurch, drive to Tekapo, 2 nights. Then Dunedin, 2 nights. Anau, Fiordland, 2 nights. Queenstown, 3 nights. Franz Josef or Fox Glacier, 1 night. 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗏𝗃, 1 night. The Nelson Tasman region, 3 nights. Then take a flight back to Auckland and connect with your international flight departing from Auckland. I also put Google Map links for the North and South Island part of the itinerary into the planning sheet below. You would arrive in Auckland, New Zealand. Most travelers arrive in the morning, so you have day 1, you have quite a bit of time. I recommend not to pick up a rental car in the morning, but take an Uber or a transfer or a airport shuttle service into the city. The second recommendation I have is to stay very central, so here like in the Viaduct Harbour. That way you can start to explore the city during that day, and you can even take a ferry over to Devonport or one of the offshore islands. On the second day, pick up your rental car in the city, Auckland City, and travel SH1 State Highway 1 South. You could either stay on the main highway and go SH2 towards the Coromandel. Otherwise, you could also go a little bit more scenic, which is the drive through 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗏𝗃 Bay. So that is my recommendation. You would have plenty of time for that second day. It's around about 3 to 4 hours drive over to the Coromandel Peninsula. If you find this video helpful, please hit the subscribe button below to stay in touch for more helpful New Zealand travel videos to come. Once you at 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏, you could either decide to go the main road 25A over to the eastern side of the Coromandel, or you could go through the Taupo road, which is quite windy. So if you're not a sure driver, you may want to stick to 25A. If you go through there, that's not only the water gardens, but also some magnificent kauri trees, which used to grow here quite abundantly in the Coromandel Peninsula. In any case, you want to be on the eastern side of the Coromandel because that is the most scenic part. On day 3, you have the full day to discover the Coromandel Peninsula. You could go either to hot water beach here, which is recommended to obviously go there with low tide because hot water comes out of the beach, or you could go kayaking from 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗏 Beach. That's a very popular activity. You could do the Cathedral Cove walk, which is open again. There are some snorkeling happening here. There are some sailing tours. There's also a standard boat trip you could take. So there's plenty to do in that area. If you want, you could branch out a little bit further north to Matarangi Beach and all the other beautiful sites, but it really depends on how much driving you would do. As you can see, it's quite windy, these roads here. So on day 4, you travel from the Coromandel Peninsula to the Waitomo caves first. You need to calculate on a good 3 hours drive, maybe some stops in between. There's a beautiful, Hamilton has a beautiful garden if you're into gardens, but also here in 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃. 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 is famous for its kiwi house, so you might want to stop here, also have lunch. Usually I would recommend to have the Waitomo tours. Again, there are numerous options, 5, 6, 7 options. You could either walk through the cave, you could do black water rafting. I've done another video just on that, so you can check that out. There's a lot of options. In any case, I would suggest to do a tour about 1 or 1:30. So, and then afterwards, after about 2-hour tour, like doing the Ruakuri caves, you continue traveling to Rotorua. So this is another good 2 hours drive, but this is stunning scenery, especially if you actually go through that southern area. I love to do that when I was a tour guide. I love to drive through here. It takes a little bit longer, but it's classic North Island country with rolling hills. It's very green and really beautiful. So you would arrive around about 5:30 or 6 o'clock in Rotorua. So with this itinerary, we have you staying in Rotorua for 3 nights. The reason is there's so much to do, and you can really use it as a base for the central North Island. So there are some tours like canopy tours, zipline through the rainforest. There are some cultural tours with Kaurangi. There's actually Hobbiton village is not far away up here in Matamata. You could even, it's about an hour's drive going to Matamata. So there's plenty to do. There's the redwood forest. There's some geysers, obviously, some thermal sites, some health and spa. So the first day, you really could spend quite a bit of time around the Rotorua area. So on day number 6, I recommend you going south towards Taupo, Lake Taupo. There's lots of sites in between. The drive is only about 1.5 hours one way, but you have here the Waimango Valley, which is a great volcanic site. I love that place. You have Waitapu, another interesting site. They activate Lady Knox Geyser. Again, I've done another video on all that. But yeah, continue further south. There are the Hooker Falls, there are the jet boating Hooker Falls, so there's plenty to see down here towards Taupo, and you could easily spend all day. For some people, if you want to do the Tongariro crossing, that's the Tongariro National Park here, you might want to consider, if this is your focus for the North Island, you want to consider staying in Taupo as your base for the 3 nights instead of Rotorua. Because it's much closer, it would be quite a long distance getting into Tongariro from Rotorua and back in one day. So on your day 7, you would take a domestic flight to Christchurch. Either you can do that from Rotorua. There's actually one flight around about 10 o'clock in the morning direct to Christchurch, which is great. Or you could also do a flight from Taupo, which most likely would go through Auckland or Wellington to Christchurch, so it would take a little bit longer. So after your flight from Rotorua, you would arrive in Christchurch around about midday, 1 o'clock. You would pick up a rental car from the airport and then traveling towards Lake Tekapo. The drive is normally around about 4 hours. Google Maps are always a little bit out by 10 to 15%, so you need to add that time. But another very important part I would suggest is not to go down State Highway 1, but actually use the inland scenic route going through Rakaya Gorge here, it's the Rakaya River, going through Mount Summers, going through Geraldine, which is a lovely little village here. You can have lunch, there are toilet stops, and then continue towards Lake Tekapo, and you would stay 2 nights in Lake Tekapo. Lake Tekapo is famous not only for the beautiful site with Lake Tekapo in front of you, but also for stargazing. So if you're interested in that, there's the Mount John Observatory, but there's also in town a couple of stargazing options for you. On your first full day though, I recommend to head over into the Mount Cook National Park. It's about 1 hour 20-minute drive one way towards Mount Cook Village. And in Mount Cook Village there's some famous walks, some going up the Hooker Valley here, but also what I like is the Tasman Glacier View walk, which is great. I've done another video as well as with a lot of other sites here in the South Island. There's simply so much information, so I'll encourage you to check out my playlists listed in the description box below. So after day 7 and 8 in the Lake Tekapo Mount Cook region, you would head further south towards Dunedin. You need to calculate about 5-hour drive, especially if you want to have stops along the way, like between 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 and Marama. There are some salmon farms you might want to stop. You want to go through the Waitomo Valley, which is gorgeous. There's a lot of hydro dams around there for electricity production. And then you would head into the eastern coast. I would highly recommend you heading into Oamaru. Have a stop there. It's a beautiful village, especially the old part, the old harbour part. I highly encourage you to stop there, have lunch, have a break, and enjoy that kind of history in that part of New Zealand. Then continue further south. We have the famous Meraki boulders here, where the Boulder Cafe is. Meraki Village is actually a different place, so keep in mind, but you can't miss it. It's on the left-hand side when you're traveling further south, and then you're heading basically into Dunedin, which is the Edinburgh of New Zealand. There's a lot of settlers from Scotland came over to New Zealand in the 1850s, 80s, 60s. Big gold rush as well. But the key reason is the Otago Peninsula. You're coming here. It's about the penguin colony and the albatross colony, which is very close by. So I highly encourage you to do a nature tour. So after 2 nights in Dunedin, head over towards the western side on day 11. You have a couple of options here. You can go on the State Highway 1, which is around 4 to 5 hours, or you can actually do a little detour. So the first option is here just after 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃. You turn to the left and towards 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 Point. And south of 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 Point is a famous site, it's the Nugget Point Lighthouse. So if you want to do these kinds of detours, I really recommend you to start early, like 8 o'clock in the morning, so you have plenty of time to discover. Some people would also consider driving along here the southern coast of through the Catlins Forest Park, but this is quite a long drive and you really would need to be aware of that you need to have at least 8 hours or so heading from Dunedin over to 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 and Fiordland. But what I recommend is actually heading through Invercargill and going along the southern scenic route here. So you would go from Dunedin, 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃, and then head into the Invercargill. It's a great site to have coffee, have a break, and then actually going through Riverton, going through Tuatapere, and actually heading from the southern end, going into Manapuri and to 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃. And again, we would have 2 nights in 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 to discover the Fiordland National Park. So this video is getting a bit longer than normal, but there's so much to talk about. In any case, I will put other video links up here in the corner you can check later on. Like for the Fiordland region, I got a dedicated video on hikes and walks, but most people would come into the 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 region to do either the Milford Sound, and there are some fantastic options. You could either do a cruise into the fjord, you could do a day hike on the Milford track. There is the Rootburn track. There are so many hiking options in that Fiordland National Park. The other thing some people do is actually going over here to Taupo Sound, which is over here. It's from, you can see this is West Arm Lake Manapuri over to Taupo Sound. So there's a truckload of options to do. Again, check out my videos. So after having 2 nights and 1 full day in 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃, you still have a little bit of time the next morning on day number 13, because it's only about a 2-hour drive from 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 to Queenstown. Either you could go here, there's lovely, the Kepler track at the Rainbow Reach Bridge is over here. It's a beautiful little hike here into the native beach forest, but otherwise just continue towards Queenstown and have 3 nights in Queenstown. Again, there's plenty to do. I put some suggestions into the planning sheet, like going up the Dart River, which is really up here towards Glenorchy, or you could do the Mount Owenslow on Lake 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗃, or you could go bungee jump, or you could go whitewater rafting on the Shotover River or 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗃. So there's plenty to do. So you would have 2 full days for Queenstown. So after Queenstown, you head over to Franz Josef Glacier. You need to calculate 5 to 6 hour drive because there's simply so much to see and so many places to stop. You will head from the very dry central Otago region, so there are hardly any trees. You head over to the lush green west coast, and simply the reason is the Southern Alps. They go throughout the South Island from north to south, so you have the dry eastern side and you have the kind of wet, moist western side with much more rainfall. So highly encouraged. There are plenty of places to stop. We have here in Haast, there's a couple of places. Ship Creek is beautiful. Again, I've done another video on that. We got Knights Point, etc., etc. So there's plenty to see. So plan, especially if the weather conditions are good. Start reasonably early from Queenstown and head into Franz Josef Village. We have 1 night here, so most people would come here to do the glacier walk or do a helicopter ride. Another suggestion, or just walking around the area, another suggestion here I love is that Okarito Lagoon. There's a local kayaking operator and he's running kayaking trips into the lagoon, into the river system, which is wonderful because it's so authentic and low impact in that respect. There's only few people doing that. So if you're keen on something more remote, a bit more authentic, then do that. There's also another operator here in Rotorua, the White Heron Tours, which is really, really cool, the white heron birds, so keep that in mind. So on day number 17, you continue from Franz Josef further north. Again, plenty of stops along the way. There, especially here in Ross, there's an old gold mining operation. There was a lot of gold found in the 1860s, 1880s. You head through 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃, which is located here. Again, very historic place. There used to be 100 hotels. You get the vibe when you get there. There's also outside 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃, there is Lake Canary, there's the 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃 Gorge, though there's plenty to see. But you will still continue further north because you obviously need to make kilometers to get further north. So here in Punakaiki, that's a lovely spot. It's a tiny village. Only a few hundred people live here. There's no petrol station, there's no supermarket, but it's well worth for 1 day to stay here. There's the Paparoa National Park, which is right in the back here. Stunning views towards the Tasman Sea. So that would be my recommendation for yet another night on the west coast. So from Punakaiki, continue north. A couple of stops you might be interested. One is the Charleston Cave. You could do underground caving. Look at this, some ducks here as well. But there's underground caving. A lot of limestone caves in this area. But one must stop is really Cape Foulwind. It's a stunning site. There's also a seal colony. It's quite smelly, but it's beautiful. So really you want to stop there and check it out. It's basically on the way. Westport is obviously one of the larger villages here on the west coast. Good for, lunch, toilet stop. But then you head through the Buller River, which is, as you see, it's a bit windy too, into the northern part of the South Island. There's a stop here at Murchison. That's really the only larger village in between Westport and Nelson. And yeah, you continue on State Highway 6 and head into Nelson, either Nelson area or the more, Abel Tasman, Motueka area. Again, I've done a video on that area. There's lots to see, lots to do, but you will have 3 nights here. You could either stay here in Nelson central, round about here, or what I recommend is stay around Mapua, Ruby Bay, Tasman, because you will have this central base to head one day into the 𝗟𝗡𝗃𝗃 National Park. Again, many options. You can go kayaking, you can go hiking, you can go canyoning. There is lots to do and they're beautiful walks. It's the smallest national park in New Zealand, and as you can see, there's actually a coastal track, but please don't underestimate those walks because it's really steep up and steep down, so keep that in mind. Another thing a lot of people do when they're here in the Nelson Tasman region, there's a beautiful cycle trail which goes from Nelson through Richmond and then on to Rabbit Island, which is here the local beach as well. Beautiful. So there's a cycle trail, and then there's a little ferry here going over to Mapua. Lovely, lovely place, Mapua Wharf. And you can get a transfer back to Nelson, or you have your car waiting there for you. From Nelson, you would take a domestic flight back to Auckland. There are direct flights. They take about 1 hour, 20 minutes. It's very convenient. This will basically complete your 3 weeks North and South Island travel itinerary. So here are some more important planning tips. Number 1, this 3 weeks New Zealand North and South Island travel itinerary gives you a great head start. Use the itinerary layout with the recommended service links in the planning sheet. Number 2, when you are traveling in the peak summer season, so between November and March, early bookings are essential. You need to pre-book 6 to 8 months prior to arrival. That way you get the best accommodation and also save money with lower rental car costs and airfares. Number 3, alternative transport options such as a motorhome or camper van will require a different planning structure. You could also consider a driver guide for key sections of your itinerary. Once at location, you can use tours for transport, which will often pick you up from the accommodation. Number 4, weather is very changeable in New Zealand, so check out my other videos about this topic in the How to Travel New Zealand playlist. All the other links you'll find in the description box below. Thanks very much for watching. See you in the next video.